I just like what you're doing. The Grande was the epicenter of the activity that sprang up in Detroit during that period, which was so exciting. And you were there recording it. That was a great thing from my point of view, and I'm glad you're still alive today and trying to get the shit out.
Up in No Religion, written by John Sinclair.
This is a candid interview with John Sinclair about his experiences managing the MC5. It is an informative and fascinating insight into behind the scenes with one of the best bands in the world, the MC5 in Detroit in the late 60s. Hi, I'm Alan LeCarey, your host and producer of this content. This interview was made in early 2013 with John Sinclair in Ann Arbor. There are some additional interviews with Steve Donaghy, who was the bass player in Barry Manilow's band and also played on the song I Write the Songs and more. Steve was also a member of one of my bands from high school. Next, Jim Sudemeyer recalls meeting the MC5 and some interesting facts about the band and Rob Tyner. When I was a kid, I had the privilege of getting to know and record many of the up-and-coming Detroit rock bands and artists. I first met the MC5 at the Crow's Nest gig in St. Clair Shores. From that time on, I recorded them every chance I got. My father, who loved film and audio, bought a Sony reel-to-reel tape recorder. At that time, I began to book and manage a band called The Third Power. This gave me access to the blooming musical scene and Detroit's best talent. Now, in 2016, I'm releasing multiple historic audio documentaries after many failed attempts. Although I'm legitimate and did all of this on my own dime and with the artist's permission, life has become complex with copyright and other developments in the entertainment industry. I'm counting on Ted and Joe and the MC5 and others to keep their word with me and allow these historical recordings to be made available for all of you. I met John Sinclair while attempting to get into an MC5 concert at the Grande Ballroom to record their music. At that time, I was also recording other Detroit bands like Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes, the Stuart Avery Assemblage, and a band I was managing at the time called The Third Power. Drew Abbott, their guitar player, went on to be a guitarist in Bob Seger's Silver Bullet Band. This has become my life's work to publish them for your enjoyment. Keeping these tapes safe over all these years has been challenging. Some of the tapes I made have already been published by John in a recording company. That was the Unitarian Church gig in Detroit. The record liner says it was recorded by an anonymous engineer. That would be me they're referring to. So I sincerely hope you enjoy these moments with some great budding artists. I invite you to support them by purchasing their recordings where available. I'm also asking you to support United Earth Fund with your free will donations to advance our educational and life-saving initiatives and to publish more of these world-class concerts for you. To get your copy of this audio documentary entitled Kick Out the Jams Concert Series, go to unitedearthfund.org or kickoutthejams.org and use the form on the website. Enter your email address and UEF will send you an MP3 copy of the concert. We will also send you updates on new concert releases that are in the works. So, here we go. Let's hear what John Sinclair has to say about his Kick Out the Jams experience with the MC5. Enjoy.
To make a recording in those days before cassettes, you had to have what's like a desktop computer now to a laptop. You had to have a big machine, about this big, about that tall, and you had to have the 5-inch or 7-inch reels of tape. And it was quite complex, and not everybody could have one because they cost a lot of money. But I always assumed that it was your dad's, am I correct? Because usually when you knew somebody who had one, it was their dad's.
And then I borrowed 2 tracks when we started recording at the Grande regularly. One of the flute players I knew in a band had a 2-track, a concert tone, so I'd go borrow it before every gig.
Yeah, oh cool. Well, so I remember meeting you in the Grande parking lot. You were trying to get in, you were 15. You weren't allowed in on the age limit. And you said, if you can get me in, I'll record the band and give you a copy of the tape. And that sounded good to me because from the band point of view, there wasn't any other way we could get a recording. We had no idea what we sounded like. So I thought, this is a good deal, the kid. I'll just say he's okay, and then he'll give me a tape, and then we'll know what we sounded like. So that's a part of it I remember. And then you would turn up at different gigs, and I would always try to get you in because I thought what you were doing was really cool.
I interviewed the guy that went the night you took us into the Cream concert. He says, yeah, I remember when John let us in, he came downstairs and he had big bushy hair and a joint in each ear.
Behind each ear, yeah. Not like a banana in there.
I can remember being dropped off by my father in a 1963 Ford station wagon. I can remember being at the door. We stopped off at the front of the Grande Ballroom and were met by John Sinclair. I recall that he had 2 joints in his hair. He had a big afro and granny glasses and bell-bottom trousers, pot belly kind of hanging out over his waist. Doesn't have that now if you've seen pictures of him lately. We went up the steps to the Grande Ballroom, and there was a couple little debates as to whether we were allowed to record or not, until, if I recall, Mr. John Sinclair said, that's Al Carey, he can record, and everyone said okay.
Can you tell me a little about your experience with the MC5, and you can, if you'd like?
I don't know, it was a big experience, and it went on for 2 years, so there was a tremendously detailed.
Well, how'd you meet him? I know how I met him.
Well, I was a fan. I heard him play. I heard him play at the Michigan State Fairgrounds in 1966 at the Michigan State Fair. What I remember that was there was the Andy Warhol Exploding Plastic Inevitable incorporating the Velvet Underground. And it was the corniest shit I'd ever seen in my life, and it ruined the Velvet Underground. I can't stand the Velvet Underground from that day because they were part of this goofy Andy Warhol putting on the public type thing for big money. But I remember that was the attraction. But they had the teen part of it that was hosted by Jerry Goodwin, who was on, what was that station in Dearborn? K.
It wasn't the CKLW.
I mean, no, the other one, WKNR. When they were AM, I think. But anyway, Jerry Goodwin, who became a really good friend of mine in years after that, he was a DJ on this top 40 radio station, and he was a champion of the bands, the local bands of Detroit, which in the mid-'60s were mostly still cover bands and people with Beatle haircuts and things like that. So Jerry Goodwin would champion the, quote, local bands, and he would be DJing there, representing the station, but then he would present some bands. I can't remember who else, but it would probably be the Rationals, the Chosen Few,
Power.
Before Third Power.
Oh, before them?
Yeah. I'm talking about 66.
That was Wilson Moore Pursuit.
That was before them.
Didn't get
This was before Psychedelic Rock. This was before Original Tunes, before the Grande. The Grande opened a month after this.
You picked me up while I was 15.
When I saw him, yeah.
So, prior to that, I didn't have a life.
What year was that? That was 68, wasn't it?
I think, and I
67?
It was 67, because
Yeah.
I have some real early recordings.
Yeah. If you have them with the Cream at the Grande, that was 67.
Well, I've got pictures shooting out of the dressing room. I've got Rob in the dressing room. I've got Fred in the dressing room. I've got Dennis. I've got you with your saxophone. I showed you on Skype.
Well, I became a fan of the MC5 in about August of 1966 after I got off doing a 6-month sentence at the Detroit House of Correction. I heard this band, they moved into our neighborhood around Wayne State, and everybody was talking about them. And I thought, man, these guys are great. And then a month later, they opened the Grande Ballroom, and they were the house band. So I was going to the Grande Ballroom anyway because I was a hippie, and that was where we were going. And they were the house band. I guess I got to know them there. I got to know them in this period. But I was a fan. I just went to see them play because whenever they played, I wanted to be there because I loved their music. Yeah, so I became friends with, especially with Rob Tyner. We became very close friends, and we spent a lot of time together. And then I became friends with Wayne and Fred and Dennis, and I knew Mike before. But I was really close with Rob Tyner, and we were like co-conspirators. We traded ideas back and forth. And he turned me on to the ideas of what he wanted to do with this band, and how he wanted to be more than a band. He wanted to be a force in American life and like that. And I said, this is really a great, noble outlook, you know. So I was with him all the way, and after about a year, nothing would happen. For they put out that 45 of I Can Only Give You Everything, and nothing, and they had different guys wanted to manage them, like music business guys. And they were tied in with Russ Gibb, as they were the house band at the Grande. But nothing was happening, nothing would move them any farther. And I saw the kind of problems that they were having in terms of getting to the gigs on time, making sure their equipment worked, they had gas money, they had guitar strings, they had drumsticks. And I thought, I could do this. I could take care of these things for them, and I could probably get them some gigs. And so I offered to do this, about in August of '67. And so I took over their affairs at that time. But I had no background in artist management. I was a poet and a beatnik and had the artist workshop. So I just thought these were fairly mechanical things that needed to be done, and I thought I could do these things, so I did. And then I wrote, mostly I was a writer, and I wrote for the Fifth Estate, and I wrote a column for the Fifth Estate newspaper called The Coat Puller. And I would write about them, and anyway, I helped build up their attraction to the audience, and I worked with them on their performance style and their performance, what they were presenting. And also in the repertoire. I mean, we worked together. I was like another member of the band, you might put it there. I guess that's the best way to describe it.
You were playing, I recorded Ice Pick Slim at 2 locations.
Yeah, well,
and you were honking on sax.
They would let me play the saxophone. I didn't really know how to play. I had a lot of nerve.
Would you say something, if you know it, about Rob choosing McCoy Tyner for his name?
Well, I don't know. When I met Rob Tyner, his real name was Robert Derminer from Lincoln Park, but he was going by Rob Tyner, and at one point he explained to me that he had taken his name from McCoy Tyner, John Coltrane's pianist, and he was a John Coltrane fanatic. Also, he told me that he and Gary Grimshaw, the artist, who was his best friend in high school at Lincoln Park, that they used to come to the artist workshop for our Sunday afternoon poetry and jazz. When they were in high school, they used to come there. So they kind of knew who I was before I knew who they were. You know what I'm saying?
Weren't you a teacher at Wayne State?
No, I was a graduate student.
And then you started, so that building was the artist workshop. You go upstairs and they had all these rooms, and there was a kitchen.
It was a dentist's office, yeah. It was a former dentist's office.
It looked like a Beatles movie.
We rented that. We lived there.
Yeah. That was classic.
Corner of Warren and John C. Lodge. Yeah. And they lived around the neighborhood at that time. Rob Tyner lived on Canfield. Mike Davis lived on Prentice and 3rd. Wayne Kramer and his people lived around the corner on Warren between John C. Lodge and Trumbull somewhere. You know, they lived around in the neighborhood because they each had their own lady friend or wife or what have you. So we were all in the same geographical area. That's really how we became friends. That and my intense admiration and respect for their music. I just thought they were the greatest. I loved them. Musically, loved them.
Well, they were great.
I know.
I was hitchhiking to their Hideout East gig, and they picked me up at Crooks and 13.
Wow.
In their station
Wait a minute,
wagon.
Highway East, is that in Clawson?
Yeah.
We closed that place. Were you there then?
I could have been. I went to a lot of your gigs, man.
Well, the one in Clawson, that was the last one he could do there.
Really? Because I was at that gig. Oh, rock and roll.
The Crow's Nest, we used to pack that place to the walls.
Is there any band member you had particularly great or challenging time with besides Rob?
Oh, Wayne Kramer is one of my best friends today. We do a lot of things together. We've made a couple of records together. He plays with me. I'm a poet and performer, so I do things with Wayne. We made a really great poetry and music record called Full Circle. It's on my account at CD Baby if you want to check it out. The experience was very valuable to me. I had a great time. It was an honor and a thrill to be associated with this band that I felt at the time was the greatest rock and roll band in the world. And I was happy for our association. And then when we got into even more beyond just rock and roll, when we were trying to overthrow the government of the United States and we became the White Panther Party, that was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It didn't turn out so great with them because they decided that they had tried this and it wasn't working for them. And they wanted to do something else. So they told me and Bob Rudnick and Jesse Crawford that they wouldn't be needing us anymore. And
They fired all of you?
Yeah, at once. We had a meeting. And I had arranged for John Landau to produce his first album with them. And he kind of poisoned the well and told them that I was bad for them and that they wouldn't be able to achieve any of their goals as long as they were part of this movement. And so they went for it. And then unhappily, the industry didn't reward them for deserting the revolution. They just said, oh, suckers, never gave them anything. They won't even put them in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Not that that's a great distinction, but they might get paid something if it happened. Of course, they haven't got Mitch Ryder in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame either.
So, because I got these guys thanks to you and thanks to my craziness and the other bands, I got these guys live before they got polluted and destroyed,
right.
and they got crazy there when Elektra showed up. No offense to them. So the Five said bye-bye to you? I thought like Jesse took it over or something.
No, they got rid of all three of us at once. And they said they just wanted to be a rock and roll band, trying to have hit records or what have you. Unhappily, it didn't work for them, but I felt bad for them, but what can you do? And then shortly after that, I went to prison, so...
How long were you in prison?
2.5 years. I kind of made it a moot issue because I couldn't do anything anyways.
You went to prison for giving an undercover cop 2 joints?
Yes, sir. Undercover police woman, yeah.
The way you got out was Lennon put pressure on the government. They didn't
No,
want
he came to Ann Arbor and played a concert on my behalf. Also Stevie Wonder, Phil Oakes, Bobby Seale, all these people. So 3 days later, they let me out on appeal bond. And 3 months later, they reversed my conviction and threw the laws out. I challenged the constitutionality of the Michigan marijuana laws. And I won eventually, but I had to spend 2.5 years in prison in the interim, But we won in March of '72. And they threw out the old laws and they reversed my conviction.
If you could talk to any of the guys who've passed on, would you like to say anything to Rob or have them or go on?
Brad, Mike. No, I saw Mike a few times, but, for years and years we weren't friends. I didn't have the least friendly feeling toward them because they fired me, and then I went to prison and they left me there, kind of.
Ouch.
And so I wasn't, and then I saw Rob Tyner's attempts to revive a band, and they were horrible. And so I just really didn't, and then he looked like a jellyfish that had washed up. I don't know, I don't like to talk about people who aren't here, but I didn't really have he wasn't the same guy to me. So we were never friends during all the time from '69 to when he passed. Same thing with Fred. I used to be really tight with both of them, but I just felt they me, basically, and then I'm not one to embrace the person who does that to me, you know. I'm easy to make up to if you say you were sorry. But they never said that, so I never cared. But Wayne did. After Wayne went to prison and did about as much time as I did, and then I saw him afterwards, and he apologized to me for what they had done, and we became friends. We're very, very close friends. Now he had a birthday party for me in L.A. last October when I was out there.
Wow.
But I'm really close with Wayne.
I've got a picture of him doing this at the Birmingham pub, and I got a recording of him saying, and I'll air this soon. Rock and roll is sickness in the head. I got him doing that on stage because
that would be him.
That would be him. I think that's classic him. I agreed to record Nugent and all these guys on my own dime, and I'd give them a copy or let them listen, and I could do anything I wanted with the tape. For example, I took the tapes we recorded and I played them at WRIF on air.
Right.
And Nugent, I'd go back to their house and they'd woodchuck. He took my tape from when I recorded him at the Cobo Hall with the Rascals. But do you recall? You just said that was the deal. I'm just because.
God, everybody in bands in those days, if you remember, everybody liked each other. We were all friends. We were friends with the Rationals. We were friends with the SRC, Wilson Mower, Third Power, all the whatever bands there were. We were all pals, and we all pulled for each other. And
is there anything that you'd like to talk about or mention of any venue that you'd like me to include in something about 1968, 78, 69 Detroit music or the Grande?
No, I just like what you're doing. The Grande was the epicenter of the activity that sprang up in Detroit during that period, which was so exciting. And you were there recording it. That was a great thing from my point of view, and I'm glad you're still alive today and trying to get the shit out. That's all I'll say.
You're still here.
Yeah, me too.
Ways, you know.
Well, I'm doing my best. I'm happy to be here.
At the time, we were fans of these groups and recorded them because we wanted to hear their music, and it wasn't being commercially recorded by anyone else, so therefore it was not commercially available until a year or two after we started doing this. But as the years have passed, and Detroit's reputation as a hotbed of the rock and roll music, they have become something more than just tapes of good bands. They have become recordings that have some place in history, certainly a place in Detroit history. And bands who are not all Detroiters, bands around the world, would love to hear this music, and hopefully, in my opinion, should hear this music. So these recordings have become more of a sort of social document, in addition to to being a musical historical document. So I really hope that the various parties can get together and allow this sort of thing to be released without any discord, and so that everyone can hear and enjoy them. And for the younger set that I tell my stories to, they in particular would love to hear them, and I think they should be heard. I think they're more important than simply tapes of the bands playing. I think they are a document of the very productive 1960s scene in Michigan and the surrounding areas. I'd love for everyone to be able to get together and say, okay, maybe the sound quality isn't master quality, but it's a priceless social document, and everyone should hear it.
Did you know that Joe Walsh married Ringo Starr's wife's sister, so Ringo is his brother-in-law?
Wow, you've got even more trivial stories than I do. Right on, brother.
The MC5 in particular, I remember that we used to spend some time, you and I, downtown, and one of the things that we did was go to the home of Rob Tyner. He's the guy that's the singer, the late Rob Tyner, I guess.
That's
and
the Rob.
We went to his apartment and hung out there for a while, and we met with him, and I remember he had a little little baby at the time. His wife was there. The little baby was maybe less than a year old. When was it? 67, 68?
Yeah, 67-ish. Isn't that the place where the windows had like a French flag in them? I mean, it looked like a movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it looked like a little hippie pad, yeah. And I remember talking to, I think a couple other members of the band were there at the time, and I remember asking them what the MC stood for, and MC5, and they laughed. And of course, it was Motor City, but they said, oh, it could be anything. It could be, motorcycle, children, or marijuana, cigarette. So they all got a big laugh out of that.
Huh.
And then Rob Tyner, who took his singing quite seriously, had a rhyming dictionary, and he went off in a room by himself or sitting at the table, I can't remember which, and just started reading rhymes from that. And I thought it was quite interesting because at the time I was in choir, and I'd never even heard of a rhyming dictionary before, but he did it for his diction or his enunciation, I guess. Worked hard at trying to make his words be understood, and also the MC5, I thought, had the words were louder than most bands. We did some crazy things, but yeah. The MC5 was pretty memorable for me, that's for sure. They were really a down-to-earth bunch of guys, and wish the best for his family since I know he's passed. The thing of the MC5 was just so memorable because we got to go. It was a band. We got to go to their house, and they invited us in.
And we got to hang with them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they were cool guys, and they weren't like dopers or anything like that either. They were straight up guys, and said, hey, we stay straight because we can't play when we're goofed up. So. The Unitarian Church, well, it was booked in advance, and there were posters made up for it, and they had sales out in front, and there was a lot of publicity. So by the time we made it to the Unitarian Church for the recording, I remember they knew we were going to be there, and you had asked them if we could record, and said, sure, bring your stuff. And I can't remember, I think your dad, we were like 15 at the time, so couldn't drive. And you were the only person I know that had a reel-to-reel tape recorder. Let's see, you brought it down there, and they were on stage, and we went right up to the stage. I mean, it wasn't like somebody sitting in the audience and doing something. It was we were right up in front of the stage talking to them before they started their set.
And then we mic'd the stage, yeah.
Yeah, I know. But anyways, we were talking to Rob, and he knew you were there, and you set up, I remember you had like a 4-track reel-to-reel, so you had microphones here and there, at least 2, I think, and we set them either right on the stage, I can't remember where they all
Yeah, I
were,
had the Third Powers 4-track Shure mixer with a reverb unit in it, and I ran mics out of that, and then I took a lead from their PA.
That's when you were managing the Third Power?
Yeah, that's how I hooked up with the guys.
Now, all I remember is he said, hey, I don't care if you record us, just give me a copy when you're done. That was the part I remember.
Yeah, excellent.
And that was Rob Tyner, the lead singer, that said that, and the other guys were standing right there. So, yep, that was a long time ago, but I definitely remember it made such an impression on me. Yeah. Rock and roll.
Born with a bad thing. If it wasn't for my bad thing, I wouldn't have any fun at all.